Hello friends, welcome back. In this lesson, we shall be looking at remedies that can help to get relief from backache. I'll now show you some numbers regarding backache prevalence. Did you know that 80% of all people around the world will suffer backache at least once in their lifetime? The prevalence rate is 7.5%. At any given time, 7.5% of the people across the world are suffering from backache. And the prevalence in women is more than it is in men. Currently, 577 million people are affected by this condition. The age group of 50 to 54 has the largest number of people suffering from it. And 85 to 95% cases do not have any identifiable cause. In other words, you may go for a number of tests and find nothing in those tests which you can point your finger at as the cause of backache. Arnica is the next remedy that we are going to consider. Arnica is a very important remedy for any kind of injury, and it is also very useful to remove shock and trauma. But in our present study, we shall be limiting ourselves to the backache. The peculiarity or speciality of arnica is that it is very useful in case of a concussion of the spine. You have a crawling kind of a sensation in the backbone or the vertebral column, and there is pressing pain between the scapulas. Every part of the body feels beaten. This is in italics. A feeling of being beaten is very peculiar to arnica pain. And there is also a bruised feeling along the whole back. In that case, arnica should be your first choice. People requiring arnica are very sensitive to touch. In fact, they dislike being touched. So much so that even clothing tends to aggravate the pain if it is touching the skin. As a matter of fact, they don't like to be consoled. They do not like consolation. Rest, of course, ameliorates and they feel much better. The patient requiring arnica is averse to answering any questions. All they want is to be left alone. Generally, the pain of arnica will be accompanied or may be accompanied with flushes of heat flash. And finally, it is one of the best remedies for ecchymosis, which means swellings in which the blood vessels under the skin are damaged and they give a kind of a blue or a black look. So that is arnica for you for backache. But we shall be meeting arnica in other areas also. The next remedy we are going to study is Bellis perennis. This remedy is usually useful if arnica does not relieve. The causation is bending. As a matter of fact, it has been known as the princely remedy of the gardener and old laborers. So if it is due to strain of bending very frequently, in that case, it is pointing towards Bellis. Of course, the first remedy of choice is arnica, but if that does not relieve, we can go ahead with Bellis perennis. Bellis perennis is usually associated with soft tissue, for example, injuries to the breast. So any soft tissue is usually amenable to Bellis perennis. Muscular soreness is another characteristic, and with a back pain, a person could exhibit lameness. As far as modalities are concerned, getting wet will aggravate, and pregnancy also aggravates. In other words, if as the pregnancy advances, if there is back pain, Bellis perennis could be a good choice. So that brings us to the end of Bellis perennis. And now we take a look at arsenicum. Arsenicum is used in a wide variety of applications. And you already encountered this remedy in a few other disorders earlier. Arsenicum is characterized by certain very distinct characteristics. And those are a prostration or weakness, burning sensation. Burning is a very essential ingredient of the arsenicum picture. Restlessness is similarly a very prominent symptom that features in this, or a very prominent sensation. And the person, just as he's weak, he's also very exhausted. The location is in the small of the back and in the shoulders. Modalities, if you remember, arsenicum is a very orderly person. A person who needs arsenicum is very fastidious. So they are upset if their sense of orderliness is ignored. In concomitants, we have backache accompanied with uterine complaints, anything to do with the uterus, and having a backache. You could consider this if the other features match. The remedy that we will look at now is bryonia. Bryonia is used in many acute conditions which have a slow onset. That means the pain would have started and developed slowly over the course of many days. It is not quick to onset. So when we are looking at this one, it is usually associated with disc problems, and the region is the small of the back. When it comes to sensations, the person will describe the pains as sharp and tearing pains. The neck can also be affected. Bryonia has the very peculiar characteristic that they are worse by any movement. We will be looking at another remedy which is very closely associated with bryonia, which is Rustox. Rustox has got the peculiarity that initial movement may be troublesome, but continued movement relieves. But in the case of bryonia, any movement will give rise to pain and make it worse. And lying still, they feel much better. They're also better with hard pressure. In fact, if somebody massages them or presses in that area where the pain is there, they will say that they are feeling much better. Heat will aggravate. Very often people tend to apply ice, but if it's a bryonia case, that person will tell you that I would prefer to have a hot application, and cold applications, in other words, makes them feel better. As far as the concomitants are concerned, they tend to become morose and sulky from pain. The next remedy that we are studying is Calcarea carbonica, or simply Calcarea. Here there is one characteristic distinguishing feature, which is causation. If the backache is caused because of overlifting or lifting heavy weights, then once again, if the other symptoms are matching, Calcarea would be your choice. The location of the pain is between the shoulder blades to the extent that it makes breathing difficult. Also, it could be in the small of the back. When we come to sensations, the sensation is as if that part is sprained. One could also observe trembling in different parts of the body. One thing to notice is that mental annoyance will aggravate. So treat these people with soft gloves. They are worse from cold, and they are worse from washing or from damp weather or damp rooms. Another very peculiar characteristic is that the spinal irritations or pain could be from sexual excesses or masturbation. The next remedy we are looking at is hypericum. Hypericum is a very useful remedy in cases of injuries, just as arnica is. But hypericum is more related to nerves. For example, if somebody's fingers are caught in a door, they can be very painful. But in such a case, the first thing to give is arnica, so that there'll be no ecchymosis, that means the blackening of the skin around that area, and then to follow it up with hypericum. Hypericum is a very good remedy to follow such injuries after arnica. As I said, they are related to the nerves, and if there are any disc problems in the vertebra, hypericum is very useful. After a fall, the slightest motion of arms or neck extorts cries. So even in such painful conditions, hypericum is extremely good. Here is another thing which you can remember, that if there is an injury to the tailbone or the coccyx, then this is one of the few remedies which will be extremely effective. They are useful in childbirth, especially after a forceps delivery. So that was hypericum. We shall be meeting this remedy in other lessons relating to injuries and pain. So that brings us to the next remedy for back pain, which is Kali Kab. Kali Kab is a very important remedy, and essentially it is felt in the small of the back. Also, the pains tend to radiate upwards or downwards along the back and even to the thighs. The quality of the pain is, or the sensation is, that of a sharp, sudden pain, and the person experiences a weakness as if broken. You must mark the words of the person who is seeking help, because they are a clue to the remedy required. We had seen weakness and prostration in Arsenicum album also. Looking at the modalities, which are one of the most important determinants, there is a 3 AM aggravation. Kali Kab will be used in many other ailments as well, and this 3 AM aggravation stands out very significantly. Cold weather always aggravates, and a person feels that he or she must lie down. Bending forward ameliorates. Hard pressure ameliorates. Warm and moist weather also make the person feel better. When it comes to concomitants, it can be after confinement, that is after delivery, after miscarriage, or with uterine complaints. So that sums up the most important symptoms for backache, which will lead you to Kali Kab. Here is a description of MagPhos, or magnesium phosphorica. This is another very useful pain remedy which you should always have in your kit. It is a remedy for cramps, convulsions, neuralgic pains, and any kind of a spasmodic symptom which comes on suddenly and goes away suddenly, and which can be quite painful. So as a pain remedy, MagPhos stands a class apart. One must always have that. It can often be used as a first aid if you do not have time to do an analysis in the quality and type of pain. Spasm itself is a leading symptom. MagPhos covers pains of muscles in the back, calves, because pain in the calves can often be an extension of pain in the back. As I told you earlier, the pain is in paroxysms, and these paroxysms will feel like violent electric shocks. Shooting neuralgic pains. These are the descriptions you will get from people. Warmth feels better. Bending double, that means bending forward, helps tremendously. This could be an observation, or this could be reported by the person regarding what makes it better. Pressure and friction also feels better. Remember, arnica was one remedy which does not like to be even touched. Even the touch of clothing feels bad. But a MagPhos will like to be pressed and also to be rubbed. It relieves pain. Another important thing is that it's a right-sided remedy. the symptoms are more predominant on the right hand side. Working in water aggravates. If they have been washing clothes, or they have been washing dishes, or they have been working anywhere in the water, their symptoms are going to aggravate. As far as concomitants are concerned, they can report convulsions or stiffness of limbs. So this was MACPHOS. We shall be taking a look at MACPHOS once again in another chapter dealing with another kind of pain. The remedy now we are considering is natrum sulfuricum or NatSulf. This is also a biochemic tissue salt, but we are looking at it from the point of view of homeopathy. NatSulf is very good as a concussion remedy. It can be concussion to the spine or concussion to the skull. There is violent pain at the back of the neck or base of the brain. So basically it affects your vertebra, but on the upper end. There is soreness up and down the spine. So they may not be able to define one particular place in the spinal area, but they will say that it feels sore. Another characteristic is described as piercing as from knives between the shoulder blades. So it's the upper back where the pain is between the shoulder blades, between the scapulae. They are worse lying on the left side, better lying on the right side. They are worse in damp weather. So these are the questions you will have to ask them. Sometimes they may also report a concomitant of sciatic pains only in certain movements, not a constant sciatic pain on the left or right, but only in certain motions or some degrees of movement of the back. So that is as far as we'll study natrum sulfuricum from the point of view of back aches. I am now going to introduce you to a very important remedy, and the name of the remedy is Nux vomica. This isn't a backache specific remedy, but it's a very large polycrest. In fact, it has often been called an everyday remedy, and it corresponds to many diseased conditions, and we shall be visiting this remedy over and over again in so many other conditions which will follow in chapters that are to come. But it is particularly suited for sedentary life. As you know, they say that sitting is the new smoking, because most of the office jobs are done on the chair. Because of internet, people have to move around less. And such people very often seek recreation in stimulating food or drugs or even alcohol. So remember, Nux vomica is for people of today. Another thing is that it has got a very characteristic constitution. Nux vomica people are irritable, oversensitive, and nervous. When we continue with our study of remedies along the course, you will find many applications of Nux vomica. So this is something we will cover once again when we do constitutional remedies. But it can be used for back pain, especially when there is pain in muscles and it is spasmodic. Come suddenly, go suddenly. And there is also neuralgic backache affecting shoulders or the lower back. These are two areas which are particularly prone to Nux vomica. And as you will see, if you are stooping over a table on a computer or over a mobile phone, it is going to affect your shoulders or lower back. These people are very sensitive to drafts of air. So if they are sitting under an air conditioning draft, that can also make their backache worse. Sitting becomes painful, and they'll try various kinds of pillows and supports in order to overcome that. So merely by looking at a person and looking at the character of a person, you will be able to often select Nux vomica for backache also. They must get up to turn because of the ache. They may not be able to describe this to you, but this is something that you will observe. That if they wish to turn, they may have to get up in order to turn. This could be in a chair, or they could even feel that in the bed and report to you that every time I wish to turn in bed, I have to sit up. Finally, spasms of the muscles causing backward arching of the head, neck and spine. You might see some ads in which you see the silhouette of a person who is trying to bend backwards in order to relieve himself or herself from pain. I could go on with the description of this remedy because it covers so many symptoms, as is the case with many other major polycrests. So by and by you'll gather more information about Nux vomica. Now we will consider the remedy Rhus tox or Rhus toxicodendron. This is a very important remedy for pain. It comes in use for many complaints of joint pain, of rheumatic complaints, and besides it has other applications for a lot of skin problems, mucous membrane issues, and so on. But presently we shall restrict ourselves to back pain. You'll be visiting this remedy again and again later in other chapters as well. The location of the pain can often be the small of the back or the nape of the neck. There is general stiffness and pain. When you study this remedy at greater depth, you will realize that stiffness is a very major characteristic which gets better after limbering up or moving around a bit. So this is one characteristic which will remain with us no matter what kind of pain we are looking at. Another characterizing pain is pain as if a heavy weight is upon that location. It is worse resting or initial motion, as we said, and is much better when a person moves around. Continued motion makes the person feel much better. Cold and damp weather will aggravate. In other words, a hot water bottle will definitely help. It helps frozen shoulders and fibrositis as well. That can be a concomitant or it could be an independent complaint of the person. That was Rhus tox for us as far as back pain was concerned. This is a very handy remedy for pain in general if it matches all the modalities. That alone would be sufficient for you to choose this remedy in many situations. Now here is a description of the remedy Ruta. Ruta is a very useful remedy when it comes to connective tissue such as tendons or bursa. But we are looking at it from the point of view of using as a back remedy for backache. The main area of the location is neck and lower back. It is also very useful for pain from injuries to the bone, but we shall be looking at injuries in a separate chapter. It has also proved very useful in sciatica. One of the characterizing symptoms is that a person feels weakness while rising from a chair or from bed. That means getting out of a chair or bed is a feeling of weakness overcomes the person. They are worse in the morning before rising. Cold weather aggravates and lying down feels better. One symptom which is quite unique is pain on deep inspiration. That means they get pain when they breathe very deeply. Please recall calcarea and compare these two symptoms before choosing which one is the most suitable remedy for your patient. In every lesson, we look at red line symptoms. Red lines are those which we should not cross. Some people also call them red flags. For backache, it's very simple to remember because there's an acronym, and that acronym is tuna fish. So let us see what these 8 alphabets stand for. T stands for backache due to trauma. So in other words, if there's any injury or trauma, you should be careful and consult a medical practitioner. U stands for unexplained weight loss. N stands for neurologic symptoms relating to nerves. You must ask the person to consult a medical doctor. A stands for aged clients who come to you. F stands for fever. If there's an accompanying fever, please consult a medical practitioner. I stands for intravenous drug use. If somebody is on IV, please don't cross the red line. If the person is already on some steroids, that's a red line you should not cross. And finally, H stands for a history of cancer. So remember, tuna fish. And those are the red lines you will never cross. So here are the 12 remedies that we discussed in this lesson today. They are, starting with arnica, Bellus perennis, bryonia, arsenicum, calcarb, calicab, magphos, rustox, hypericum, nux vomica, natsulf, and ruta. So friends, that brings me to the end of this lesson on backache. Thank you very much for your attention, and we shall meet once again in another lesson. Until then, bye bye and thank you.